life is the most extraordinary co-creation. Everywhere we look, the explicate, the implicate orders, there's a conversation happening among all things and among all levels of being.
Even if you isolate yourself on a mountaintop for an extended period of time, you will co-create with that environment and the birds and the trees and the wind and the morning and the evening. You cannot avoid the interface or the participation that you have in what's occurring around you.
That co-creation is always happening, but our job, I think, in terms of consciousness, is to become aware of that. And with awareness comes consciousness. And much of my own life has been like reclaiming consciousness.
So I think there's tremendous transformative power in just this simple act of practicing awareness of my awareness, not the content of my awareness, but the being of my awareness. And as I do that, and as I become a more powerful conduit, and I do that more and more clearly, I elevate the awareness of absolutely everybody in the room.
What I want to add to the mix is the power of love, which I believe is is underlying resonance, like that what we resonate to is truth, aka love.
Building on everything we've explored, the sense of what's alive, the sense of co-creation, the sense of transformation, and now bringing it into this central thread of emergence.
What is it that you really want? Because like Grace, I don't believe we're broken. I just think some of us are, there's a clarity about infinite games and there's a clarity about finite games. And if you're stuck in just looking at finite games, then you're not stuck in the long-term impact of what we're doing on the earth or the long-term impact of what we're doing to each other.
The portals of perception inquiry centers on how we humans evolve. We are seeking to appreciate the shift underway. Three core elements of this inquiry are consciousness, how do we evolve and transform our consciousness; leadership, what is the leadership that facilitates transformation; and community, the phenomena of communities and what they enable as crucible or a womb for the process of transformation. We are here with 6 leading practitioners: Anne Stadler, Grace Boda, Kate Sutherland, Karin Jironet, Royce Holladay, and Jeff Vander in their work with senior executives, teams, organizations, and communities. They each are at the leading edge of the art of producing transformations that create breakthrough results. So we want to inquire deeply into what you are discovering at this time, what inquiries you're developing, and what insights inspire you. Let me begin by asking that you first introduce yourself and offer an initial sense of what is most alive for you in your work, where you are experiencing a sense of discovery.
Thank you, Aviv. The silence actually is the same answer that I would give after giving my name, which is Jeff Vander. It's lovely to be here with all who are here in this room and all who will be joining us in various ways subsequently through the recording and on the Portals of Perception website. So what is alive for me is the silence, and it's alive for me individually and in the work. And I find increasingly it's natural to bring in moments of pause and deep reflection in the busyness of various engagements, be they with individuals or groups. And it seems to bring about a kind of field of grace, I would say, where things work out. And I'm experiencing a pattern of things working out that seems to be correlated with the measure and degree of the silence that we bring.
I can relate very much, Jeff, to the notion of silence. I'm in a process of shedding and letting go, or letting emerge what is seeking to emerge through me at this point, and understanding myself to be an aspect of the wholeness. And a phrase that comes from my beloved husband, Evan, is being presence. And that I find I'm anchoring to. It's similar to silence in that it takes me to a deep place. It's not about being present, it's being presence. There's something that helps soften boundaries and really open to the heart, to the ground of being, to exactly this moment. And it's characterized by silence. Silence is definitely a way there. And I'm endeavoring to being present, like less emphasis on doing and lists, and more letting my intuition guide everything moment by moment, how I move through the day, and how sort of to really embrace not knowing and not planning, strategizing, but being present.
Very much related to the prior shares. I'll say what has me most captured and attentive now is collective creative power. Each of those words being a doorway into self-awareness that I'm finding very, very powerful. So creative, I find myself asking, and my clients also asking, how am I a fractal expression of essential creative force? How does that work? How do I tend the temple of myself in a way that makes me a conduit for that essential creative force to move with integrity through me? Power, that doorway for me has been related to authentic presence, and to, even at the subtlest levels, I know that all dissonant energy will organize itself in the presence of a coherent field. So how do I build of my being a coherent enough, clear enough field that the impact that I have is what is being conducted through the temple of myself? And then collective, how do we build that coherent field together? And how do we learn to sense and respond and transmit collectively in a way that's not limited by space or time, that's non-local? So for me, collective creative power, not limited by space or time, is the impact of true presence emerging from silence. And I'm Grace Boda. I forgot to say that word. An executive and personal coach and transformational guide, working with leaders, creators, and entrepreneurs, as well as individuals looking to express their true creative power.
I'm sort of setting a pattern here of going after Grace, but she triggers things for me, and so that's good. Royce Holladay. I work with an institute called the Human Systems Dynamics Institute, and it is we study the ways that human beings live and work and play together in emergent self-organizing groups. Our founder, Glenda Young, I want to be perfectly transparent. She's my sister, and we've studied and worked together for 65 years now, but most specifically over the last 20 to 25 years in this field. And as we think about emergence, we think about it in terms of self-organization and how complex adaptive systems come together to create the patterns that characterize their work and play together, and the ways that those patterns then reinforce others who join that group or reinforce the behaviors of the group individually, group, or communally at the same time. And one of the things that has had me really interested in the last few weeks is the idea of resilience. And in these times that are so unpredictable and so chaotic and so ambiguous, how do we, as individuals and groups and teams, create resilience so that we can respond in ways that are healthy and in ways that help us to self-organize, create patterns that contribute to the health of the greater good, which is what I hear y'all talking about. That's how I hear you talking about building community. The practice that we use is it's at the overlap between the physical sciences and people sciences. And so we find ways to describe the phenomenon that we're looking at and then explain it given the dynamics of the system. So that's what we do. But when we think about resilience for me is basically the ability to adapt on a day-to-day basis to the challenges in my world around me. And if we can help people learn to do that, then as communities, as families, as individuals, we're going to continue to become more and more healthy and to find ways to help each other live through and survive and thrive in the chaos that is our world these days, the unpredictability. And so that's what I do. I've been thinking about it. One of the pieces that is very powerful for me is when I'm alive and I'm looking at the world and I'm thinking about life and I have a choice to make. The only thing I have to bring to that choice is my personal history of what I know and what I don't know, my imagination for what is possible, and then the choice in that moment to move toward what is possible or away from it. And in every single instant, I believe that's what we're doing without even knowing that that's what we're doing. And so whether that's objectively true or not, I feel it very true on a subjective and normative level with others that I've talked to. But it is in that choosing that we create or contribute to the patterns that emerge when we come and live and work and play together in community. I'm hearing that in much of what y'all are saying, but the greatest gift I've found in this work is the idea of standing in inquiry. And where we say we turn judgment into curiosity, we turn disagreement into a shared exploration. I try to continuously turn defensiveness into self-reflection. So it's not you making me feel defensive. What is it in me that's making me feel defensive? And the last one is turning assumptions into questions. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions, and I invite questions to me. And I'm looking forward to this conversation that's it's a different discourse that I'm used to, and so if I participate in the discourse in a way that makes anybody uncomfortable or wonders what the heck I'm doing, please bring it up, because that's staying in inquiry with me. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Joyce. What you speak to resonates with my approach to consciousness, leadership, and community. At present, I'm an academic. At present, I'm in the process of writing a chapter for a book, and it's about the interface between spirituality and analytical psychology, with the question to the 8 co-authors, does spirituality assist individuation? So for that, I have this as a resource. And I'm also working mainly with this one. And it boils down to that the objective reality is perceived subjectively, but it's also manifesting through subjective experience, which I hear you speak to. And well, I can't see it differently. I believe referencing David Bohm and the notion of a participatory universe, that we do contribute to the implicate order, and it's an honor and a responsibility that will come with a mature individuation process and a spiritual practice, in my opinion. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anne Stadler. I am playing at the moment, and discovering the range of possibility that play offers, particularly in relation to knotty problems that don't appear to be able to be anything but polarizing and the point of the swords meeting each other over and over and over. So that's one of the biggest things, I think, that is on my agenda. The way my agenda emerges is through the process of listening and through sourcing, or whatever the spiritual practice is, that is a consistent download from whatever the fields are that are around us and around me and that I'm in part of, and inside of. The other thing that I'm noticing very, very intimately is the role of love. And I am practicing with especially with my granddaughters, who have beautiful families of young people, Royce, who are really benefiting from how their mothers and fathers live, and the commitment that they have to their spiritual practice and and the practice of loving all of their lives. And we've been discovering that. What does that actually mean? how do you love the parts of your life that are really difficult and not graceful, not what you even imagined they might be. And again, that's asking the question, not how do I blame somebody, but how did I learn? How is love helping me to learn something that is really key to me and my own growth and individuation? I think that a big over envelope of all of this is my absolute commitment to the oneness I am in nature with a big N, the capital N. I feel that what is the most true of me is being nature. And I access that both from observing the world around me, not only the world of humans, but the world of trees and birds, and those are the two that communicate most strongly right at the moment, because I'm looking at them. But on stones, rocks, as anyone who's been in my house, they know I hear rocks. I hear from rocks. and I have piles of them speaking to me that move around the house with me to remind me that I am one with them. And so these come to me as processes for the emergence and opening of me as you said, Grace, a conduit for whatever my fractal, my kaleidoscope image is of the whole. So, I mean, I'm excited by the fact that we're all in the same stream, rowing our different boats down the stream very nicely. And I look forward to whatever the questions are that others want to address, and I'll pitch in.
Yes, it's deliciously wonderful. First saliency that's emerging for me is how you are each describing in an adjacent way the way you work with yourself, with the situations and the configurations, the groups, the different scenarios that you serve. Jeff, you highlighted silence, and Kate, you spoke to being presence, and Grace, you spoke to collective creative power, and Royce, you highlighted resilience and staying in inquiry, and Karin, you framed the the relationship and the journey of spiritual practice and how it facilitates the maturation or the journey of individuation. And you spoke, Anne, about the role of love and being nature and playing and sourcing. And did I miss anybody? I don't think so. And the weave I'm hearing, the first thread that's emerging for me is how we are recognizing wherever we are, whatever circumstance we are in, it's how we use ourselves as a conduit, as the facilitative temple, as the agency or the process embassy, by way of being a catalyst for whatever it is that we are looking to liberate, help emancipate, help catalyze. So I want to invite this next round of inquiry around the element of co-creation. What is it that you are discovering that enables you to be a facilitator of co-creation, or where and in what circumstances do you see around you the thrill or the joy of co-creation? And by way of starting into the space, just earlier this week, I spent 2 days with 120 people that happen to be a technology company. 2 full days, 7 hours a day. People always are skeptical, how are you going to keep us engaged for 7 hours when we come globally in different time zones? And when they arrive, they discover that one of the modalities we use is we shapeshift every 20 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. So in a 7-hour run, apart from the 45 minutes lunch break, they experience about 9 or 10 different transitions and formats, sometimes in 2s, sometimes in 3s, sometimes in 4s. And there is a conductive inquiry around different aspects of vision, mission, strategy. So there is a pool, there is a gravitational forward, future gravitational pool. In this case, it has a company context, but invitational for the personal growth, personal development, leadership development context inside it. And we are literally connecting different synapses of the organizational brain by continually shapeshifting. So part of the design of the experience is facilitating those synapses to connect, to talk to each other, to accelerate the ideation, the exploration, the integration, and the co-creation, and the unlock of energy again and again surprises me in terms of what becomes possible for the individuals and for the team as a whole, the organization as a whole. Just 2 days earlier, we were with nearly 100 people in a portals event, and there it was different. It was more open-ended inquiry into how do we imagine the future, and inviting people to step into in this case, we've chosen 2036, part of the Create New Futures approach that I've worked with teams, organizations, is we place ourselves in the future and we work backward from it. In this case, inviting people to imagine themselves in that space and discover that space as a permission for co-creation and emancipation. So please, I'm interested, whatever threads of experience in the individual, in the collective, in the large collective experiences and spaces that you move through, what would you offer to this inquiry of co-creation?
A few thoughts are coming to me here. The first that comes to me, because you referenced joy, the way that I find the most joy in co-creation is in really sensing the co-creation I experience with life itself, where when there is an inquiry or something in front of me, a client's challenge or my own or whatever, if my awareness is wide open, ready to receive, then all the beautiful synchronies, the little, what Arnie Mindell calls quantum flirts, or the, ways that just spontaneously something is handed to me or somebody says something. And it gives me that feeling that this is none of us. It sort of bursts that little illusion of I'm an individual person all alone trying to solve this problem. It just opens it up to here is life just moving through this, and every resource under the sun beyond my wildest imagination is available to me if I can receive it. So that's like the ultimate co-creation for me. But also some of the ways that I enjoy bringing bringing different perspectives together to find out the creativity that gets unleashed when those are brought in, things that you wouldn't expect to come together. So, for example, I'm really enjoying this year putting together some things, partnering with an Aikido master, with a herd of horses who are beautiful teachers of energetic and heart congruence, and also of group leadership, with artists and dancers. So all the ways that we kind of bring executives, for example, all of these situations into realms where they learn to attend in ways they may not otherwise attend, and something new and creative gets birthed. And finally, I'll say, I also enjoy cross-pollinating, bringing things that emerge in one setting into another unlikely setting. So for example, I'm working with a group of women who had the experience in their own lives of being sex trafficked as youth, and they are working with youth who are currently being sex trafficked. And they are doing some of the most powerful and honest self-discovery in terms of untangling the victim narrative and finding their own true personal power. And there is such beauty and truth emerging there that when I take that to CEOs I work with of larger organizations who might never cross paths with these individuals, but who are benefiting from those lessons, or when I take, something that emerges in a group that is environmental, a land trust or something, that they're learning from, and take that and cross-pollinate it over into academia, where I'm working with a university president. So all of these kind of conversations that maybe aren't happening in real time, but they're cross-pollinating with one another, and they, the application of something from another context into this one opens up a pathway that maybe a person wasn't seeing before. That also brings me great delight.
I was waiting to see whether Royce might follow Grace again. But I will follow Grace this time. And what comes to me is that life is the most extraordinary co-creation. Everywhere we look, the explicate, the implicate orders, there's a conversation happening among all things and among all levels of being, with each informing all the rest. So I suppose I could say one practice is to see that it is happening, and that it's always happening and could only be happening in any moment. And then to play with it and let it proceed. There's a word that comes in, though, as another practice that I've been working with in relation to a company that recognizes that it is life. How many companies have acknowledged that we are life, we are nature? And one of the key principles is non-againstness, which is similar to improv, where you have the yes and, so there's no. And it's funny to say non-againstness in that context, but to really open and allow all the signals of life and other people to filter in and find their place, and then to consciously build upon what is next, and not discard, but also focus appropriately where life seems to be going in this giant conversation. And it really, in my experience, is increasingly playful and very joyous. And where it's not so flowy, where it's not so graceful, I ask, where's the opportunity? What's knocking? What could be learned through the dissonance, which also has its place?
Well, I have the same thoughts that you Jeff, that I was having a hard time identifying circumstances in which co-creation does not occur. So even if you isolate yourself on a mountaintop for an extended period of time, you will co-create with that environment, and the birds and the trees and the wind and the morning and the evening. You cannot avoid the interface or the participation that you have in what's occurring around you. So I can only concur with you, Jeff. It happens everywhere, but how consciously do you interact with it? that remains my question for today.
One of the things that occurs to me is that I sort of stopped at Jeff's word knocking on the door, or knocking. So anyways, you ended with something about knocking. And I think I'm very interested and have practiced for a long time opening space, just plain opening space for, so don't have to wait for knocking, but I'm good at noticing and at catching glimmers or glimpses, like the quantum flirts you are speaking of, Grace. I agree that co-creation is always happening, but our job, I think, in terms of consciousness, is to become aware of that. And with awareness comes consciousness. And much of my own life has been like reclaiming consciousness and awareness that I am in the flow. I am co-creating. I am doing the kinds of things that Grace was so joyfully describing and gave her such delight. And not for other people's benefit only, but for my personal benefit, so I can be part of. So, because that's how I be part of, how I belong, how I be part of what you are speaking, is noticing where I'm, have these feelings of excitement and or connection. And the way I boil it down is for myself is opening space.
And thank you all for such rich reflections. And I didn't introduce myself earlier, so I'm going to be nonlinear and just say my name's Kate Sutherland, and I'm co-founder with Jeff Vander of a consultancy called Emerge Collab. And our goal is to support emergence. That's doing it in, collab is short for collaboratory. So the notion of working collaboratively with others in a experimental, emergent, what's trying to come through way. And in this co-creation, I utterly agree that co-creation is, that life is co-creative and that we are all aspects of life. Part of my understanding is that life deeply respects our journey as individuals, and that if we don't ask for help or open to help, that life doesn't interfere. And I think that's a deep, deep, deep expression of love, like the kind of love that would allow us as humans to totally destroy the planet out of respect for our dignity as amazing beings with incredible potential. And I see the crises we're in as a portal for us to finally wake up more. And it's happening. I see it happening. And in that asking for help, it's I see in myself where I forget to ask for help, and I struggle. And so I see myself as a fractal, as others have said, of the whole. And so my own work to open up, as you're speaking, Anne, about opening space, is opening space within. One of the most joyous practices that has emerged through Emerge Collab is something that we call supra tank. And that's where the 5 members of the Emerge Collab team invite someone who is got an audacious vision or like a really thorny problem to come, and we hold space. So we've all done deep prep work to be able to show up with our best selves, and it's very intuitive, and it's very much that we open a space where people feel safe and they feel seen, and in a 90-minute session, very profound transformation happens for people, like deep, long-standing questioning of their leadership can flip to where they get that they are the leaders needed in their system. There's people are able to settle out of a kind of keeping themselves small and allowing that they want to step into creating magic, to really own that they are shape shifters in the spaces that they work in. So there are other examples. Doing that work is, as Anne speaking to, is like that it's so joyous. Like, and I think a hallmark of deep co-creative work is that there is that there's benefits for everyone in the system, that it does. It's a co-creation of all of us. We're all shifted. We are everyone who's participating. And I sense that, to Grace's point, that ripples, that each one of these is like an acupuncture point for our collective field as well. This conversation is an acupuncture point for our collective field, moving energy and removing blockages and opening possibilities for people. And there's one other place I'd like to speak to is the practice of constellation work, which is, I see some nodding. It's a way of working with the field to untangle the field and to allow more love to flow, where individuals represent different aspects of a system, not sort of taking it on from a mental point of view, but really their own bodies or awareness as a receptor of what's going on for that part of the system. And in a 40-minute period, you can shift the dynamics in a family system or an organizational system, or in something I'm very interested in exploring is how, for example, I want to create a circle here in Powell River where I live to support reconciliation, where Powell River is in a conversation about whether or not to change the name. And so there's an aspect of the community that is open to that and sees that there's appropriate part of decolonization to change the name of this place, and others who are very identified. It's like, over my dead body will we change the name? And I believe that in co-creatively we can work with not necessarily people. You can work with people who represent that. That would be Arnold Mindell's work. You can also work in a constellation term just to shift and support the field, to open to support more love and allow what's seeking to emerge. I find that work, I am stunned by how every person in a constellation benefits personally, and there's this unleashing of joy. And it's, I believe, co-creation, that's a co-creation with the intelligence of life. That's how it works. It's like having an instrument for tapping in, and it's definitely collective. Like that, You can do it other ways, but it's very, very powerful in a collective sense.
So I know we don't want to get too deep into the specifics of any particular practices, but I notice an opportunity for non-againstness, because when I feel into the layers at which these different modalities operate, I get that they're different layers. And so there need be no argument, actually, if we see that they can be complementary. And sometimes you need the representative approach, completely dispassionate, not plugged into the energies. And sometimes we need those who are plugged in for very good reasons, and wholeness in action.
I could comment here too, and this may help bring us back. As I'm listening to this part of the conversation unfold, I become aware of even the frame co-creation. We're all speaking to our capacity to hold the non-duality of duality and vice versa. Like, to know ourselves, to be co-creating requires identification with multiplicity, with more than oneself. And yet all of us are speaking to that as a larger life process. And so there is a recognition I'm hearing in all of our comments of a unitary process unfolding through the experience of multitudes in relationship with each other. So I'm appreciating, even as we go through all of the examples and the varieties of ways it can show up, and also appreciating the fact that although the seven of us are talking with a recognition of the unitive duality, the unitariness of duality, that one doesn't need that. One can be completely, we're using our intellect and our rational minds to explain a phenomenon that we all can experience, even if we don't know the words and have never heard the concepts. We all can step into a field of something and experience something that feels other than self, and at the same time know it all as one big movement. I don't know if that helped bring us any closer, but I was noticing that in all of our comments here.
Yeah, it's all part of the weave, part of the music that is emerging with us. The thread that I would like us to try to follow, and I know, Royce, you didn't come into this second round, but let me try and weave where I propose the next inquiry, is because you already are in almost in everything you were describing through the different senses of co-creation, with the idea that life is a co-creator, with the idea that you cannot not be in co-creation even if you're on your own and at the top of a mountain, and with the idea of cross-pollinating and bringing and shape-shifting different configurations and different systems. In what I'm hearing in all of those different examples, and especially in the concrete examples, Kate, that you offered around the practice of 5 people holding space, facilitating for somebody an inquiry whereby they are seeking the next elevation, the next revelation, the next transformation. So I'm interested that we look to further explore what is it that we are discovering about transformation, how co-creation enables, leads, facilitates, catalyzes transformation, and also inside the deepest practices that we engage, because the other thread, unifying thread, is number one, we each recognize that in the systems we operate, whether it's a constellation or any other way you call it, we are each a temple, a conduit, an entry point of consciousness and energy into the system. So we are a system within a system wherein we have a capacity to be facilitative, to be a catalyst. And we are recognizing that part of what we were called to do, are called to do in our beingness, with our gifts, is to serve as an enabler of the transformation of, it can be a company, it can be an organization, it can be humanity at large. So I'm interested that we offer a little more of what's in your field of awareness about this idea of transformation. How do we facilitate transformation? What do we know and notice about accelerated transformation? What are we discovering about holding the transformed state? Because so much of transformational work, that the challenge is you facilitate a state, an experience, a peak experience. How is it being sustained? How is it being held? How do we put pitons in the new elevation on the mountain so we hold to that expanded consciousness? All of that, please.
I think I'll go first, because this ties into what I was thinking while I was listening to folks speak. And I think that I think of transformation as the shifting of patterns in a human system. So I shift my patterns, I transform my patterns on a daily basis. I'm recovering from 2 knee replacements this spring and summer, and so each day I'm doing a little more exercise, a little more exercise, a little more exercise, and it's shifting the patterns of the pain I feel. It's shifting the patterns of how much I limp or don't limp. It's shifting the pattern of energy, and so it's and then I was thinking about the last question, the way that I Anne called it open space, or the way that I be with groups and offer myself as a conduit, is questions. Even as a teacher, I may be offering information about, here's what we believe in HSD, or here's a process that we teach, or here's a tool we use. But it's always in the context of, how is this landing with this person and this person and this person? So that I try to sit next to them, at least metaphorically, and see the world through their eyes and say, how does this help you with your challenge? How does this help you with your challenge? So that when I'm sitting with someone and I see the pattern, I help them. I don't know what their patterns are. Often it's the first time Grace walked into a training with me, I had no idea who she was. But over time, she revealed enough to me that I saw some patterns, and then shining a light on those and reflecting them back to her. But how do we help people hold on to those new patterns as they emerge? And one of the things that we talk about is, what are the conditions that shape those patterns for you? What holds it together? What are the differences that really matter in that pattern? What are the exchanges? How do you shift energy and time and information in the system? Then if we can use what we call simple rules around those new patterns, then when I try something new, then I have a new way of thinking about the pattern itself, rather than relying on my old stuff. I can be consciously shifting toward that pattern. It goes back to the thing I said a while ago about, in every moment I have a choice to move toward what I want or away from what I want. And in any moment, in teaching or in being with people, opening that space to questions, saying, whatever this person has to offer me is different from what I've had before, and how do I hear that and integrate with it so that together we're creating a new space? So it really is based in the physics of what that is all about, but it's also based in the feeling and the consciousness and the awareness, and doing it in an intentional way. And knowing that sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes I'm fully there, and sometimes I'm not. And knowing that I can always come back the next time and do it differently. So that idea of being present with questions and helping people see their transformation, and say, what do you need to hold this in place? What will help you? What are the simple rules that will help you hold this transformation in place?
Royce, let me just ask you to build a little further how you mean and how you speak to the idea of pattern, because the way you describe it, it has an energetic dimension, it has a mental or mind configuration dimension. It has a behavioral, observational dimension. Do you have a sequence of how you trace a pattern, or is it all of the above? And in terms of facilitating the transformation, I imagine, is one of my discoveries in this space is some people get rewired or updated in the mental model first, and then they lead to behavior, and then that changes the energetic pattern. Others that are more attuned in the energetic somatic sense may actually come into that first and then find the language for it. So can you offer a little more grounding in how you talk to the idea of pattern transformation?
Sure. And we think of patterns as all of those things that you described, all of those realms. And we have a really clear definition that it is similarities, differences, and connections that have meaning across space and time. So those may be cognitive connections that you're seeing. It may be behavioral, it may be emotional, it may be energetic. So that's why it fits. And I always laugh when I say this, but the truth is I can't do somebody else's work. And so whichever seems most available to them based on the patterns I've seen or as I've watched them, and I may offer a suggestion, and if it doesn't work, then I realize I'm not where they are. But it is, where is that person? Where are these people? So there's not a set sequence, not a set series of steps. It's adaptive in terms of who's in front of me, who's with me. Where am I that day even? Am I being able to listen? Am I being able to be present and open to that person? And if I'm not, what do I need to do to get to that place? So does that, I don't know if that answers your question, Avi.
Yes, it gives, it's an invitation for more inquiries. I want to open the space and let everybody else come in on the inquiry of transformation. What I gather from what you're describing, it is not prescriptive. It is situational. It is configured by the person and the moment in time, and it has all those multi-dimensionalities and entry points from all possible directions. Thank you.
Very adaptive. It's very adaptive, right? Thank you. Thanks.
What you're speaking of, Royce, I call the third ear. It's because it comes into my mind and attention, whatever it is that they're showing me, even if they're not speaking it.
That's it. Third ear, that intuition. Mm-hmm.
Well, Royce, you use the phrase simple rules, which I love. And simplicity is key in my recent observing and experiencing of transformation, and being able to identify the essence and place attention on the essence. So much falls away that otherwise would be cluttering and obstructive of energy. And so I've been in an ongoing, ever deepening inquiry. How simple can it be without being oversimplified? And I would say that is maybe my third most principle at the moment, third top, number 3 principle. And I'll listen for what number 1 and 2 might be.
Jeff, staying with you just a little to further this, when you talk about discovering or accessing the simple or the most essential inside a cluttered picture, can you say a little more about what it is that you do to find that, or how do you experience that, again, in the context of what I'm hearing you're describing, accessing, sourcing, confirming, validating, being with the essence of something in its simplest form is in itself a liberating, transformative service to a situation, to a person. Can you say a little more about how you do that and how it turns up in you?
Well, you've invited me to articulate principle number one, which is resonance. And feeling the response of the self system, the physical and energetic system, ultimately to truth. What is most true in a situation? So I can feel that. We can all feel it in our own ways. And with more and more practice, it becomes more and more conscious. Thank you, Karin. And so when I'm working with people, I invite us to listen collectively for where that felt sense of resonance is. And different folks might pick up different signals. And when we bring it together, there is an added clarity from the fact that it is a collective listening process. And I've observed time and again that when we focus in on where that resonance is, life takes over in a sense. Life seems to do the heavy lifting. And we need only do our part, which might be 2% of what we thought we needed to do. So transformation can be accelerated partly by virtue of all the energy that's liberated to do what really is ours to do. And resonance for me is that kind of, it's almost like a tractor beam that pulls us in to the essence.
You know, I had this question, which I think you just answered. My question was, in introducing this whole thing, Aviv, you talked about breakthrough, processes or breakthrough moments, and also breakdown is a function of community systems, of what we have called communities. And I am wondering if those two descriptors are actually a function of a non-emergent system, where the system itself is so tight, the bubble is so over and over and over oriented to control that there's no way of sensing resonance as a normal part of the system. Anyways, that's my question. What do people know? What are people noticing? What do you notice, Jeff?
Well, I've noticed that when there's a lot of rigidity, it's harder to do the work, and there tends to be more drama, more conflict interpersonally, but also I would say conflict and drama with the field of life. Mm-hmm. Life circumstances don't flow. So every moment is some version, some variant of a breakdown or a breakthrough. You know, you have the highs and the lows, hence the drama. And I would say that has been normal for a lot of us. Like, we just assume that's how life works. And when we bring in this idea of resonance mapping, I call it, at first it might be just something that I'm doing because I have the capacity from practicing for years now. But the system begins to change. The system begins to open. More and more people suddenly realize, you know, I can sense the subtle signals as well. And it takes time. But I do have concrete, specific instances of people who had an aha and realized suddenly they have their own way of resonance mapping. And then that system changes and things start to work better. Maybe it's investment comes or some kind of strategic partnership happens quite by surprise. And so those are hallmarks or characteristics of when we're flowing and when we're in the emergent state, or the state that is conducive to emergence. And you know, that rigidity dissolves. And I find also that life has a wonderful genius at finding where there's rigidity and poking at it and eroding it and bringing it into awareness where we can see it and decide for something that would be a more fluid and emergent state.
In alignment with all of this, especially with simple as a principle, I think one of the most powerful, powerful investments we can make in transformation is simply being aware of attention and knowing that, yeah.
I think, Tara, Karin is just about to leave us. Is there anything you want to say before you leave us?
Well, thank you. I just sent a message in the chat to thank you all for very engaging invitation and conversation. I have appreciated learning from you, and I hope life finds you well and inspired and adapted to transformation. So, good night from Amsterdam.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Please, Grace.
Yes. So with regard to transformation, I think recognizing that attention is never, ever frivolous, that there is an impact of even the subtlest, tiniest little nuances of how we use our attention, even if we're not aware of that. So I think about, there's the laser beam foreground attention we pay. What am I, focused on? What am I trying to do? What am I consciously paying attention to? But there is that really powerful background contextual attention or awareness. Well, I'll say it's awareness, but we can make it attention, make it conscious by noticing it's so profoundly impactful. The difference between, have I left my body? Is my attention no longer in my body? Do I remember that I'm connected to the earth? Am I noticing the flow of energy between and among other beings? Am I, all of these kinds of things? Is my awareness really going to an unrecognized projection I'm making onto somebody else of some old undigested wound of my own? Is my awareness really kind of stuck in the past or with a conversation I anticipate? All that background stuff. If we are more in conscious command of that contextual awareness, I can choose to take care of all of those things that I talked about before as tending the temple of self. And I think it's so important because the more clear we are as conduits, the more powerfully we hold that coherent field, the bigger the impact on others of every tiny little move of our attention, because others will unconsciously follow our attention. So I know when I'm in the front of the room that everybody in the room, whether they know it or not, is following where my attention goes. So if I suddenly get distracted or lose my connection to my own ground or my body, everybody else loses a little something too. So I think there's tremendous transformative power in just this simple act of practicing awareness of my awareness, not the content of my awareness, but the being of my awareness. And as I do that, and as I become a more powerful conduit, and I do that more and more clearly, I elevate the awareness of absolutely everybody in the room. So there's an exponential effect for anyone who's choosing to powerfully hold their own field and then command their own attention. I think that's also a sustainable aspect of transformation. So it's self-transformation and transformation in my field, and it's sustainable because once I become aware of myself as awareness, I can't forget it. I could get distracted from it, but if I'm taking responsibility for my own attention and keeping awareness on awareness, then by definition, it's sustainable because it can't be lost if I'm there, if that makes sense.
You are forever, always, first of all, working inside yourself before you're working outside of yourself. Is that the way you mean taking responsibility to awareness of awareness?
Yes, that would be another way of saying it too, is what I perceive outside is so largely influenced by the whole filter through which I perceive it and how I'm experiencing myself. And I also know that what I'm holding in my field that's unrecognized will magnetize a mirror or a matching experience outside of myself. So I can, in a way, see my larger field as a big expression of the consciousness that through which I perceive it. So there's a way that it's all self, but for me to begin that process by clearing and working and making my own, this local being as clear as possible, then I can have the greatest impact on all the other local selves that are around, because we are collectively, this is back again to that unitary multitude thing we were talking about before in co-creation is, I'm not sure this is making any sense, but there's a way that working with self is working with everything that is an expression. And there is a way that working with everything that's an expression is working with self. But I always start with the knowledge that I can't take anyone anywhere that I haven't been myself, that I can't go, that I don't have the clarity and presence to go to.
That sense that you describe, Grace, of being as clear as can be, a see-through sense of clarity in yourself, lives very close to Jeff describing the resonance practice. They are the two sides of the same. That's the way it's turning up for me. So we are again discovering how we are agents of transformation in ourselves, in the being present, attuned, clear, ready to discover as an intelligent tool as can be for resonance, such that we proffer back to the system we are in the greatest service, the greatest feedback loop, whatever it is that can come through our system. I'm curious if Kate, if you want to come on any aspect of this, or anybody else, please.
Yes, I have to watch because I'm getting excited. So
excitement is great.
It is. It's wonderful. I love you tying, Aviv, the resonance and work on self, like the two contributions from Jeff and Grace. And what I want to add to the mix is the power of love, which I believe is is underlying resonance, like that what we resonate to is truth, aka love, like that those inter-are with each other. There are different well, I said at the beginning I was curious about words and words that resonate. So in some contexts I can use truth, in some contexts I'll use trust, in some contexts I'll use love. But they are pointing, I think, to the essence of life and to what's seeking to emerge. And I believe that, or my experiences of transformation, that we've been speaking about awareness and the importance of awareness, and there's something about witnessing that when anyone in a system is able to witness, especially with love, what is emerging or true, or seeing a pattern, to pick up on what Royce is saying, it's just seeing the pattern. Whether or not we speak or name the pattern, energetically the pattern being knows that it's seen. And there's something kind of alchemy in when a pattern is seen and loved, that it can let go. And I believe that can happen in a way that sticks when it's fully seen and it's fully witnessed. And so that's part of the power, when we're speaking again of collective, of the importance of circles, the power of people coming together in a circle. And there's someone who convenes the circle, and who, as Grace is speaking to, brings like a clarity of depth that calls forth the clarity of depth. But there's also fields. So the field of AA, for example, is something that you come together for an AA circle, and you can tap into the field of healthy AA circles globally, where one of my teachers, David Hawkins, speaks about calibrating the energy of fields, and that an AA organization on average calibrates at unconditional love, very high level, which is part of its transformative impact. And it's not because of a guru, or it's not because of philosophy. There are practices that hold that container, that keep it pure and clean and clear. And I believe the witnessing is an aspect that we're speaking to, and that's part of what excites me about that is that anyone listening to this can witness in the systems that they're part of and facilitate transformative change. And you don't have to speak it. It's just to really, I really see you. And that will facilitate transformative change.
What do you, let me ask you, Kate, to build on this, what is your wildest conjecture or belief about this property that you're describing to do with witnessing, that the witnessing itself has a loving witnessing, has a alchemical transformative property? What is your belief, or as I say, wildest belief about that? Where is it coming from? How does it work? How do you tell yourself that story?
I believe it's life. That when we're tapped into life, we're tapped into love, and when we're which is open to itself, and that opening is delicious. Yeah. And my sense of what's possible is it's like we're in a we're on a journey of awakening, and we've been on a journey of individuation, which has been Richard Tarnas's work, an arc of the last millennia, multiple millennia, and that's giving us a heightened understanding of the beauty. It's like we're not fused, we're individuated. And it's now about seeing the oneness. That's what's seeking to emerge from my perspective, is that there is no separation. There's no other. We can't leave anyone behind. We can't be, I love non-againstness, Jeff. I think that's delicious also. That anytime, the other day I did, I think one of the worst coaching sessions that I've ever done because I was triggered. And it was so painful to me afterwards. It was just like, it was excruciating. I was like, and then how do I love myself in that? But there's a virtuousness that is its own reward as we dare to let go of separate self and of control and of needing to know. Can we step into the dance to play, as Anne is speaking to so beautifully? I'm really riffing now, and so I'll stop.
Well, I think it's palpable. I feel it. I absolutely feel it, and in the group and in myself. The thing that's hear, see, and love, hear as well. The vibration. It isn't necessarily the words you hear the vibration. And that's the essence of compassion, to be heard, seen, and loved. And once you get it, you just get it. One of the great blessings of the Charter for Compassion and the work of the Charter for Compassion was that we began to see that there were ways that different spiritual traditions held and practiced compassion. And it was out of that listening and seeing the interspiritual, or the multitude of practices, that a bunch of us started to, at the urging of a Navajo woman who was part of our circle, started to practice hear, seeing, and loving in them, and particularly in the drama issues, where we would really sit there and help it come out and hear, see, and love the person who were bringing this to our attention. Anyhow, it really, what you say is, it isn't just subjective. I mean, it's both and. You know, the collective resonates with the depth of this of witnessing. Yeah, because it activates that in all of us.
So I want to invite us to, looking at the time, possibly the final round, to now speak, building on everything we've explored, the sense of what's alive, the sense of co-creation, the sense of transformation, and now bringing it into this central thread of emergence. And yes, and what you spoke a little earlier about this idea of breakthrough or breakdown, is it an indication that the system is actually not emergent? So I want to actually go directly to that, because there is in that such an important observation. The principle that guides me in this is the idea that a box of matches cannot change a box of matches. It needs a human hand to light the match, meaning to actualize the potential of a box of matches, or you need to leave the box of matches outdoors in the elements where it will lose, it will dissipate its potential. So in the same way, the observation is that when a system is stuck in its arrested or blocked or stopped situation, there is no facility for it to unleash, to unlock itself. And one way I appreciate the idea of emergence and how we sense and feel emergence is that we use the word to describe a situation, a scenario where the system is not locked in itself anymore. It allows a certain dynamism from within or from without, such that the potential that is latent in it begins to emancipate, begins to reveal itself. That can be at a personal level, the collective level, at a planetary humanity, and all the rest of it. So what I'm asking now in this last round, although I was analytical in the way I framed that, is that I'd like to invite you to speak from your heart about emergence at this time, given the civilizational crises that we see all around us. What is an emergent message from your heart to humanity at this time? If humanity is a person and you were going to talk to that person about the sense of emergence and possibility, what is it that you feel called to say?
We are not broken, is what I would say. That every moment is just an instant in a larger process. And in those instants that seem dark, sometimes we're revealing to ourselves our shadows and our distortions, but that very revelation, I almost said revolution, that very revelation activates change. So even now, when we feel polarized and when things can feel hard for some people, I would say that essential unchanging part of the process, that essential truth of what life is and who we are, remains as powerful as ever and eternally available, with a shift of attention and awareness, we bring that even further into being.
There are a couple things coming up for me, Avi, and one of them is that I don't think of emergence as being naughty or nice. That hate emerges in the same way love emerges. They're patterns of behavior, patterns of feeling, and we express them in different ways, and so there's no difference. And so as I would encounter someone, I think the question I would ask is, in the infinite arc of your experience, what is it you really want? And then walking beside them as they continue to refine and revise and re-explore that question over and over and over. What is it that you really want? Because like Grace, I don't believe we're broken. I just think some of us are, there's a clarity about infinite games and there's a clarity about finite games. And if you're stuck in just looking at finite games, then you're not stuck in the long-term impact of what we're doing on the earth or the long-term impact of what we're doing to each other. And so I think that's what I would say to them.
I've been trying to think of the verb that I want to use. But I believe it is. I invite you and me to live what I truly and you truly love and care about, to create a world that works for all of us.
I invite you and me, thank you, Anne, include myself, to trust the intelligence of life that is unfolding through us all, that this is a time of death and rebirth, and that's a time where it's natural to feel fear in the death part of the cycle. And it's the time when having trust in life can help us soothe ourselves, not suppress the fears, but really choose, to Royce's point, to choose how we respond and to source from love. And that the intensity of this time is calling us to deepen, to come like deep, deep, deep down to a deep source where fundamentally, no matter what's happening, we're okay. And to be able to take ourselves there when we get rocked and knocked. And then be kind to ourselves for having been rocked and knocked, so we don't waste a lot of time because that's part of the process. And to allow that at some level, you know this, you know that we're in a death and rebirth cycle at some level, and to find curiosity about the birth and the possibility of what's seeking to emerge at this time, more beautiful than we can ever imagine.
Well, Kate, you speak my heart, so let me follow on what you've just shared and say, life is so much more than what happens. It's an infinite, benevolent force that is always available, always arising and emerging with solutions and inspiration and answers to our deepest and most mundane questions. And there's a possibility to partner with this infinite goodness. And moreover, it longs for the partnership as much as we do. And as a simple practice, what we can do to remind ourselves and remember the larger parts of ourselves, none other than ourselves, is to be still and know the infinite, unbounded goodness that life is, which is there for you. And the outcome is therefore assured. How we get there is the sum of our many decisions. So let us align with that goodness and emerge into this more beautiful world that we've all named so beautifully and eloquently. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this ever-changing, shape-shifting, never before recorded conversation that we've just created here. I feel that we have seeded many inquiries about co-creation, about transformation, about life, about emergence, about the possibility of, as you described, the cycle of death and rebirth there, Kate, and throughout this journey that we brought ourselves and the temple that we each are, the conduit that we each are, the consciousness that we each are, the living practice that we each are. And perhaps the salient note in this is one of invitation for anyone and for all to join in whatever way or shape or form or capacity that they want to participate in the discovery. This is a conversation that is happening now in many places, through different lands, through different language. There is something that's occurring about this shift that's underway. It needs all people, it needs all talent, it needs all generations. I'm very interested that we continue to evolve this conversation in a multi-generational way. It needs different inclinations and capacities, people that are in activism and spiritual activism, and people that are more in the introspective, and people that are in the field in variety of leadership capacities. All of those are needed. Nobody is going to organize it in one unified place. The organizing of the organizers is likely to fail as an organizational initiative. The aggregators of aggregators will likely fail, but what will not fail is what you're describing, Jeff, that intelligence of the organizing force of life, and the fact that it is a distributed conversation, distributed consciousness, and that there is a sense that when we listen to the emergent order that's arising, there is so much more that's unifying. And therefore the differences, the uniquenesses, they are enriching us forever and forever. So I thank you so very much for the opportunity to be in this discovery. It feels more like a beginning than a landing place. This is a good time to press pause and to continue another time. Thank you so very much.